Welcome to yet another exciting edition of Offside Musings. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of my co-host, Emeka Onyagwa, to today's episode. In the episode, we're going to look at the phenomenon that we call first ladyship in Nigeria. And the immediate provocation for this episode has to do with the shameful events that happened in Anambra State just about a couple of weeks ago, during the inauguration of Governor Charles Chukwuma Soludo as the governor of the state. As most of our listeners already know, during that ceremony, the wife of the outgoing governor, Bianca, got into a confrontation with the widow of the late Biafran leader, Emeka Ojukwu. This woman is Bianca Ojukwu. And Bianca Ojukwu ended up delivering a dirty slap on the first lady, or the outgoing first lady. Since that terrible event, scandalous event, stories have since come out that indeed the first lady was rather notorious for acts of violence herself. In fact, that she was known to slap multiple people and to act in ways that were, if you like, unbefitting of the office of the governor. I would not say that it's unbefitting of her office as First Lady, because there is no such office really, constitutionally speaking. And so our argument in today's podcast is that every state government, as well as the federal government, should actually rein in this idea that the wives of governors and the president have a role to play in public service. If they have any role to play, that role should be voluntary, and it must be at the pleasure and discretion of the president or the governor, as the case may be. And it is important that these first ladies understand that their actions can reflect terribly on the image of their state, the state run by their husbands, or indeed of the nation. Nigeria has had another really disastrous history with first ladies in the past who in some cases would hijack public office, as happened with Umaru Yar'Adua when he was bedridden in a Saudi hospital, and basically his wife, Turai Yar'Adua, with a clique of politicians who were close to Yar'Adua, ran Nigeria for months on end, claiming that her husband, who was in hospital in Saudi Arabia, was leading the country and giving instructions. We also know of the perhaps even more notorious example of Patience Jonathan, who simply made a spectacle of herself at any given opportunity. And so we're going to look at this whole issue in today's today's episode of the podcast, and we welcome you.
Right.
Well, isn't it something that it's all about a slap, today's show?
So we have, apparently we have some professional slappers out there.
Wow, I'll tell you something, I saw an interview with the new governor of Anambra State, Charles Chukwuma Soludo, and with Arise Television. So Ruben Abati and his colleague were interviewing the new governor. And he suggested that what had happened was comic relief. And indeed, it became comic relief. I've seen so many people, I've seen so many viral videos, done around the slap that Bianca Ojukwu dealt Ebelechukwu Obiano, the wife of the immediate past governor of Anambra State. But yeah, it's something that is worth talking about, and worth talking about for a bunch of reasons. I think that people have had fun talking about it, but I think there is a serious dimension to all of that, and I think that that's what we need to get into today.
Yeah. I mean, the dimension obviously is, like you alluded to, like you've already said, the office of the first spouse, which essentially is the first lady. I was listening to a lot. Obviously, we've all heard a whole bunch of takes on this. Watch it on Arise, where there was two ladies and two guys, and the ladies were doing everything possible to hold themselves from laughing while even giving the, we've heard a whole bunch of takes, but the reality is, somebody takes out her. So the reality is, like you said, there's no constitutional role for the office of a first lady, but apparently it's now a staple, like so many things are in the political and societal. In fact, more so the societal power dynamic in Nigeria. First spouse. Most times it's been obviously first ladies. Well, we've had female governors. I believe you've said that by the time there was a female governor in Anambra.
Yes, Mrs. Veji Etiaba was for a little bit. She was Peter Obi's deputy governor, and then Peter Obi had a problem, legal problem, where he was illegally removed for a bit, and then the woman took over for a little bit until Peter Obi won the court battle and got reinstated.
Yeah, so we've had that, but so many takes on it. It's just another avenue to spend money. You're going to go into it, but one of the takes, I could talk about. I was listening to a whole bunch of these people on the female wing. Sat down and tried to make the case that men dominate everything, and that's the only position women have, and that's the only reason why all these things happen. Which I feel like the one take I could take away from everything I have been listening to is the fact that it doesn't seem like people are talking about, no matter which side you might want to be on, the reality that role doesn't exist and shouldn't exist.
Yeah, it should be possible for us at some point to have a governor who is single, whether it's a woman or a man. And so we won't want to be saddled with a first boyfriend or a first girlfriend. And in the case of the woman who governed Anambra State, Mrs. Etiaba, she was a widow at the time, so she didn't have a husband. But she had sons who are distinguished in the legal profession and in business and so on. But we wouldn't want to have first children either, okay? We're not running a monarchical system. We don't have a queen. We don't have a king. Nigerians elect a governor. They elect a president. And they look to these heads of the executive branch of governance to be stewards of their affairs. And so the whole idea that the spouse of the governor, of the president, then becomes as it were, occupies a certain space to the point of making a nuisance and a spectacle of themselves is something that we really should push back against. In the case of Mrs. Obiano, initially I said I was distressed. When I heard this, I was actually traveling in South Carolina. My wife and I went there for a short vacation. And so as soon as I arrived at the airport, I saw 7 missed calls from a relative and from Nigeria. So my initial reaction is, wow, there's something wrong going on. And as I'm looking at this 7 missed calls, this relative called me again. And his first question to me was, have you seen what's going on in Anambra? I said, no, with a sense of trepidation, because I felt if this guy has called me 7 times, missed calls on WhatsApp, and then was calling me the 8th time when I just arrived at the airport, I said, there must be something tragic. So he told me of the slap. And indeed, the slap was tragic, And so I've had the opportunity to speak to a number of friends in Anambra State, including those who are in political circles. And I was distressed to hear that the wife of the ex-governor, Ebelechukwu Obiano is her name, actually had a habit, of slapping people. That she slapped so many people, including, I was told, the wife of the deputy governor in the presence of her husband. Okay? I didn't know what to make of that because, in my view, if you have a propensity to slap people because your husband, your spouse, is the governor, I don't think people should spare you the legal consequences. People should report this. They should make a criminal case against her. And if a criminal case, if the police, the security, law enforcement agencies in Nigeria are disinclined to pursue, open a criminal case, people should file a civil case to expose this behavior, this absurdity, this really ludicrous conduct, okay? But to get to the point, the Constitution, did not anticipate that the spouse of the governor, whether it be a man or woman, should ever play any role in the public space. And so this was an official event, the inauguration of the new governor, all right? And from several accounts, Mrs. Obiano, the wife of the outgoing governor, had seen Bianca Ojukwu, who had, her husband, of course, was one of the founders of APGA, the All People's Grand Alliance, All Progressives Grand Alliance. Yeah. And I think that Bianca Ojukwu had a disagreement with the outgoing governor and, may have, withdrawn herself from that circle, perhaps even worked against Soludo, who was the candidate of APGA in the November 6th governorship election. But whatever happens, she was there as a guest of the new governor for the inauguration of the new governor. The wife of the outgoing governor sees her and decides that she must go in her face and ask why she had come when she was against the party and so on. So that kind of conduct, that kind of recklessness, that kind of shameless conduct becomes possible because, in a sense, we have allowed the notion that the spouse of somebody in power also has power or should exercise power, and it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, leading into what you're just saying, that one is bad, and we'll keep talking about it on this episode. But it's not the first time that this has happened. There have been others. We've been seeing it happen. We've covered it up. In fact, if you had watched the video of what was happening, the moment the incident transpired, which slap, think a follow up one. But I mean, I saw some good technique from from Bianca, where she also blocked in case of this thing, which is some good MMA techniques.
Yeah. No, I actually, I was fortunate to know Bianca. I've known Bianca since the 80s, So she actually is a karate artist.
You should.
So
you should.
Yeah. So, and I guess that sort of was a decisive factor in this encounter because, as I said, Mrs. Obiano was notorious for slapping people. And so Bianca Ojukwu must have known of this reputation and said, hell no, I will not be added to her number of victims. And Mrs. Bianca Ojukwu was suggesting that the outgoing governor's wife was thoroughly inebriated, that she reeked of alcohol. And so Bianca must have said, well, this woman doesn't have a good sense of, where lines should be in terms of social behavior. And when somebody like that is also drunk, then all bets are off. So I think that Bianca decided I might as well, make offense the best form of defense.
Yeah. Like I said, like I was saying, there's been other people on the receiving end, both from this very lady in terms of slaps, and we've seen first spouses act in very reckless manners. First spouses, even in the Senate, female senators, their husbands have been very distant. Some of them were instrumental in putting them there, but some of them were just part of. And we've seen them. We've seen presidents at the presidential level. We've seen first spouse. In fact, back to back, we saw first spouses at the presidential level. We saw Jonathan, which deserves maybe a 4-volume book on his own.
Oh yeah. Of course, all of us know of the famous Patience Jonathan first ladyship, and after the abduction, the kidnap of the Chibok girls, she famously called a meeting where she summoned the principals and the police and so on to the presidential villa, and she presided over a meeting which she had no right to hold, because you have no law enforcement, you have no intelligence duties or prerogatives as first lady. And so the whole idea of that there is a national, in fact, an international outrage, the kidnap of 200 to 300 schoolgirls who were taking exams in Chibok in Borno State. And so she calls this meeting where she basically presumes to want to address this crisis, and that gave us one of the most viral moments from the Jonathan presidency, where she said, oh yeah, continue. There is God, oh, there is God, oh, the blood you are spilling, there is God, oh, that's sort of inelegant, rustic behavior. And the thing is, every politician, man or woman, has a right to marry whoever they love, right? But if your spouse is somebody who doesn't have a sense of decorum, and you allow them a public role, then what ends up happening is that they incessantly bring embarrassment and bring outrage and ultimately tarnish the image of a state of the country. And of course, there is the case of Mrs. Yaradua, which we're
I was about to get to that.
Talk about next.
I was about to get to that because it's. I mean, the Chibok girls was the most viral of the moments for good luck. But there's so many moments with former First Lady Patience Jonathan, and then we get to the Yaradua.
Of course, there was a moment where Patience Jonathan was in Rivers State on a visit, and she was going to some place with our convoy and had to drive the convoy of the governor of the road, and where the governor was in a community talking about some demolitions of, coastal property, which were a blight. And, so she took the microphone and, lectured him. And, it's almost as if in a very school mamish way, almost like I'm the first lady, and so I can say whatever I want. There are all kinds of flawed marriages that people get into, whether, it's, you marry a husband or a wife whose conduct and sense of etiquette would leave much to be desired, but people have the right to make their choices of spouse, right? But then when people elect you as a governor or as a president, they don't want to inherit the baggage of a terrible spouse. A spouse who doesn't know where that there are lines, that lines need to be drawn, on certain ways of relating to other people. And we have this habit in Nigeria of calling people whose husbands or wives have power. We start calling them mommy or daddy. And some people, of course, it flows into the religious arena where some pastors become daddy or mommy, and so it's easy for the spouse of a president in Nigeria, of a governor, to think that he or she is also part of the package elected into office. No, your husband or your wife was elected. Okay, we want to see as little of you as possible, and the moment the spouse of a governor or president comes out in public, they better be aware that they should be of the finest possible behavior. They should not be a nuisance. They should not arrogate to themselves any prerogatives to make policy or to offer appointments, except for insofar as those appointments have to do with the domestic affairs of the governor or the president, where, of course, the wife or husband of the incumbent, the holder of the office, should have a voice, right? But beyond that, what we saw, when Yaradua was, so we were talking about Patience Jonathan, that when her husband was president, she would go to River State and on one occasion basically harassed the convoy of the governor and drove the governor off the road so that she will have her imperious passage. and on another occasion, took the microphone at a public event where the governor was talking to a community, a coastal community, about the need to clean up the blight. She, basically took it upon herself to lecture the governor. And it's possible that the governor was doing something altogether stupid, right? Mm-hmm. But as First Lady, you're not, it's not up to you, okay? Maybe the community will take the governor to court. If you have sympathy for the community, you can help them get a good lawyer to take the governor to court. But you don't come to a public forum and lecture a governor or drive a governor off the road, or presume that when there is a big crisis like terrorists kidnapping school children, that you call a meeting in your office, and the principal and law enforcement and so on, that you call them to your office. I mean, what are you able to do, really? What are you constitutionally able to do? Nothing, right? And then, of course, we had the case of Turai Yaradua, the wife of Umaru Yaradua, a man that I refuse to call president because he himself admitted that the election that put him in office was fraudulent, even though he then claimed that he would have still won in a free and fair election. But when Yaradua was sick and hospitalized in Saudi Arabia for months, basically the wife formed a clique and ran the country, in the name of her husband. And so actions were made, policies were announced and implemented, ostensibly dictated by her husband, who was basically lying comatose in a Saudi hospital. So such things can actually bring a country to the edge, in fact, of absolute ruin.
In fact, you didn't put the first one, was that they prevented what was supposed to be the constitutional transfer
of power to the vice president.
They physically prevented it.
Yes.
They came back when they heard that the transfer had happened. They smuggled him in, and then
left him in. Nobody saw him. The vice president couldn't see him. But they said, oh, yeah, the president is back and he's directing things. So the kind of crazy, depraved experience that we've had with this first spouse phenomenon should give us pause. It's almost as if, and that's one of the things that I really admired with Soludo. Okay, so when he was running to be governor, he and I understand that he's extremely close to his wife, but he did not put the wife front and center of his campaign. And my hope is that going forward in the 4 years that he's going to serve as governor, if everything goes well, that if his wife is going to have any role at all, and this is advice that what should be imperative really all over the country, is if your wife or your spouse is going to have any role in any public role, that it be such a role as will not necessitate the transfer of public funds to your spouse, because there's no, it's constitutionally impossible, to entrust a first spouse with public funds. They have no constitutional standing to do that.
Yeah, we clearly we could say what the reality is. There's two schools of thought. First one is the ones that say we don't know how politics is. I was in conversation this week with some people who are just, you don't know how. Quoting them directly, you don't know how things work. Nigeria is moving forward. Maybe it's not moving forward at your pace. This is the way things work in Nigeria. Literally defending the system. There's that prevalent school of thought. Most times I find that this type of people who defend these positions with blood and sweat are people who are angling one day to get to that position, or hoping that they would be one step from proximity to somebody in that position. But that being said, they sit down, and there are people who sit down and say that is our system. That is the way it works.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we in Nigeria we have quote and unquote our system. All right. And I say quote and unquote because the Nigerian system is actually an anything goes system. Okay. And which accounts for the fact that Nigeria, with all its resources, both human and material, is in the sorry state that it's been for decades since independence, because we do whatever goes. All right. There are best practices. Okay. And there are legal mandates. All right. So legally speaking, constitutionally speaking, the office of the first spouse is a fiction, doesn't exist. All right. So the question becomes, if over time we've had a practice of leaving it to the discretion of the occupants of offices to either permit a narrow or expansive role for their spouses, and their spouses have brought some degree of notoriety or decorum to the exercise of that prerogative. We're not to let that then become the norm. I'm a big fan of the great Kenyan writer Ngugi wa Thiong'o. And in a recent interview with him, he's talking about a different question, the whole question of language in African literature. But he said that what's happened in the world is that we have normalized abnormality. So that's what we do in Nigeria. Okay, we plan to do a show maybe in the next 2 weeks about the whole idea of security vote. What we call security vote.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have it on the calendar to do it. Security vote is an abnormality. Okay. So the same way where the wife of the president, and they started with the military. Wife of Babangida will start MAMSA, and lots and lots of money will be contributed by the federal government and by the states in the hands of this woman, okay, who was the president of the wife of the president, who had no
better life for rural women.
Yeah, better life for rural women, had no way of accounting for the money, the funds that
she had her own staff.
Yeah, precisely.
She had her own wing of the office.
Yeah, so we inherited that sort of abnormality and we've made it normal. But if we want a country that will fulfill its potential and will earn the respect of the international community, we better stop with this idea that that's how things are done. To give you an example, right? It's sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is for years become the norm in Nigeria. So if you are in a position to give jobs, you sleep with as many of the female applicants.
While is majority of the cases are men, large amount of women to do the same. I've come across women who would withhold
Yes. Yes. Oh yeah, no, women do it. There are. I was speaking with a graduate student some years ago from a university there, and he told me of this woman who supervised graduate students, and if she wanted you to sleep with her and you didn't offer yourself, you pay the price. She'll withhold, make sure that you were frustrated for years, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. But I mean, majority of which is men. I mean, looking at it in terms of we've seen how we've normalized the abnormalities.
Absolutely.
It's you have people who will defend it to the end. They'll defend it if their in-law gets in that position.
Yeah.
They will send a delegation to if nothing is happening, they'll send a delegation to the husband or the wife, and it's going to be all hell let loose. This our daughter or our son is not being given their just due. And just like you said, it all came down from Mariam Babangida. They became royalty in some ways. Babangida comes in, and from the get-go, he had these political instincts on how to survive. He literally wrote the book on how a coup survives and how you stay in power with the coup. And then, but part of that was the empowerment of the office of the First Lady. He had the MAMSA thing, this thing, to the point of Mariam Babangida not just being involved in government and appointing ministers, berating them publicly, letting them know. Bolaji Akinyemi, I think, former Minister of External Affairs, famously talked about how external affairs needed to pass through Mariam Babangida's office. And we've taken that and we've ran with it. We've ran with it with the Abacha years. We kept running with it.
Yeah.
It's going to the point now where so many stories about what happened during Yar'Adua's time, haven't been told publicly. Where there was a physical, they went into the point of making sure physically that they kept into office people around Yar'Adua at that point in time who were controlling it with the wife, where Yar'Adua was literally,
basically, comatose.
It was an organ donor.
Yeah,
not to laugh at it, but they kept it. So we've gone with it. To that point where we had a First Lady who came late to an event and decided to confront whatever mental state you might have been or not been in. So it's and then you have all these people that have come out. And you have people who are talking about, well, the only reason this happened is because because women are not given opportunities, and that's the only opportunity. That's why you have that. And in fact, the only reason you have two women fighting is because women don't have opportunities, so they have to fight for, all these terrible takes where it's just like, do we have a system of government? Do we have even the system of government where we say we have? Do we uphold any of it? But it just doesn't seem anything close to it. It just seems like we are trying to accept and normalize new abnormalities in every way, shape, or form, and it's sad. It's terrible. I think.
No, I was speaking. I ran into a man who was a minister some time ago in Nigeria. So I ran into him with a friend of mine during a visit to Nigeria. And he was telling me of the so-called First Lady when he served as minister, that on one occasion he needed to see the president twice at the president's official residence. He arrived there the first time, and the staff of the First Lady called him aside and said, what did you bring to greet the First Lady? And that it was the norm that if you came to the official residence, you have to greet the First Lady with some cash gift. And this guy was just absolutely confused. He'd lived outside of the country prior to his appointment as a minister, so he didn't think that this was a thing. But the staff of the First Lady made such a stink and told him to go and ask other ministers, And so he asked around, and he was indeed told that, yes, if you go to visit the First Lady, you have to give him millions, So he had to go and find funds from his ministry and bring to greet the First Lady. I think on that occasion or a different occasion, he came twice in a day to see the president. And so the first time he came, he'd given money to the First Lady. They came the second time, he felt, okay, it's the same day I gave her money already. And the First Lady herself confronted him and said, this is an insult and disrespect to my office. You are coming for the second time. And so each time you come, you have to bring something. So these are the kinds of abnormalities that we have normalized in Nigeria. Okay? So when Nigerians say, this is the way things are done, guess what? The only reason there is no regular, uninterrupted power supply in Nigeria is because of the way things are done in Nigeria. Obasanjo spent in excess of $16 billion promising Nigerians regular, uninterrupted power supply. As part of that promise, Obasanjo showed places where had a paper where they wrote that some power project had been done, it'd been commissioned. Investigators who were members of the National Assembly after Obasanjo left office went and saw that at some of the sites where Obasanjo claimed that things had been done, there wasn't even sand moved, okay, much less a tree cut, much less any project completed, okay? And yet we allow Obasanjo to go on freely and we call him Baba, you know? The fact that the people who do things in Nigeria don't get held to account, don't get publicly shamed, don't get sent to jail. In other words, the way we do things in Nigeria. So when, people who say, this is the way we do things in Nigeria, they ought to know that the consequences of the life we live in Nigeria, the fact that we don't have roads, when there are every year, state and federal governments have a budget allocations for road construction. At the end of the year, the roads are in terrible shape. Guess what? The money they budgeted has been spent. Okay? Where was it spent? It's been put in the pockets of people. All right? Of a few people. And they buy Rolls Royces and they buy Bentleys and so on. And they buy property abroad. And we say, that's the way we do things in Nigeria. Okay? The fact that there is no hospital in Nigeria that any governor, any minister, any Nigerian president will permit him or herself to be admitted in, or indeed permit his or her spouses and children to be attended to. In other words, Nigeria doesn't have health care of any sort. Okay? The fact that every year we vote money to equip hospitals, to buy, diagnostic equipment that are not bought, to buy therapeutic medications that are not bought, so that, accident victims have to buy Band-Aids for to cover their wounds. That's how bad things are. And yet, monies are voted. The fact that if you go to our universities and secondary schools and elementary schools, that they are an eyesore, okay? That kids are educated in really heart-rending conditions is because we do what? That's the way things are done in Nigeria. So when Nigerians come up with this argument that we must defend some foolish policy because that's the way things are done in Nigeria, they better understand that that's the same reason that lots and lots of Nigerians, okay, some of the best brains that the country boasts of are outside of the country.
Yeah, that's true though. That's true. I mean, it's insane, man. What can it's insanity to me. I never, for the love of Christ, I was having conversations with people, and I'm almost like at very high pitch, like, look, guys are defending the system. This is the political system. Wait your turn, or zoning. So another thing, what we said, two things we're going to talk about. In fact, three things we have coming up. When we have security votes.
Yes,
I'm going to have a conversation on that. We hopefully have Ngugi in Toego.
Ngugi
Wationgo coming up as well.
Actually, is Ngugi Wationgo.
Ngugi Wationgo.
Yes.
So we should have Ngugi coming up.
So the N is silent.
The N is silent.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about what was the last one again? Anyway, so it's
the governors, various governors, to ensure that their spouses stay out of the way. Recently we did an episode of what happened in Dubai, right? Where governors' wives went to Dubai and they claimed that they went to Dubai to, what they got from Dubai is the need for state and federal government in Nigeria to invest more in education and youth programs and industrialization. All right? So, we were pretty upset because there are lots of fools in Nigeria who can tell you for free that Nigeria doesn't invest enough in education, doesn't invest in industrialization, does not invest in its youth. So if you have to undertake junkets to Dubai, you had to learn something that any fool could tell you in any street corner in Nigeria. Okay? That demonstrates the kind of wastage of public resources that happens in Nigeria.
Yeah, well said. Well, these incidents, it's just amazing to see some of those things. So not even the incidents themselves, to me, the reactions and the mindsets and the way these things happen. I know. Oh yeah, I was going to say, in some ways, when it comes to zoning, that's something I was trying to remember. When it comes to zoning, we don't even talk about that. How I feel is so dangerous and bad, but so many people. I think a majority of even young people try to defend it because it gives them hope, because at some point in time it will come to their zone, and you've already knocked out a lot of candidates. You're competing with. So most of the time, if not almost the entire time, you end up with substandard candidates, and that's the third part I was going to talk about in terms of what we are going to talk about. Event how some of these how we keep coming up with bad candidates. That to me is one of it. But more importantly, I feel like the election of Soludo, which I think is wonderful and people are happy, in some ways has made people, the other side to it is people are defending it in Anambra and other places like, well, zoning produced Soludo. Zoning could have produced, without zoning, they could have had Soludo 8 years ago. People forget that in the last 8 years, it's not like Soludo has done much in the public sphere that I know of. He used to be a professor, then he becomes CBN governor, then he leaves and tries to run for governor, and it doesn't work out. And since it didn't work out 8 years ago, I don't know what he was doing. But if we think if you're so happy with Soludo, and you're so happy with the golden child or whatever people want to call him, you could have had him for the last 8 years.
That's right.
You probably would have had him for the last 8 years without zoning. So now people are now like, well, see, zoning produced Soludo. No, zoning prevented the states of Anambra from having Soludo 8 years ago.
Yeah, and it's a different subject, the zoning thing. So we're going to get to it, especially as the country shapes up for 2023 elections, whether there'll be a country then, whether it's going to be an election really that would have any credibility, and that remains to be seen, but we're going to definitely look into that in a different episode. So I think it's time to draw the curtain. And again, I really am delighted, along with my co-host Emeka Onyagwa, that you join us with every episode. And We promise to be better. We're going to work hard. And our mission, as we've always stated, is to begin to change the minds of people in Nigeria, one mind at a time, especially the minds of young people. Thank you for tuning in. Oh, we have music coming up.
Yep.